Polite Society came out here in Toronto. I think it's like probably just one theater for now, at least. Went to see it and really enjoyed it. So thank you for doing the work that you did, and really loved the wardrobe and everything. So
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you. Well, one theatre is better than no theatres, so that's great. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's actually good because it's been a while. I remember when I used to go to university,
mm,
uh, at the time, in the late 90s, early 2000, it was very common for like small independent films to come in one theater or two, and then they
mm,
slowly, and that kind of stopped in the middle, at least to my knowledge. It wasn't as much as it used to be. And this is
mm.
like it's a good thing because then it builds up that excitement and that hype.
Yeah.
And if the film is good, which it is, and really, really appreciate it, all the work that you did.
Oh, thank you. It was one of those projects that's I think back on it with such fondness and such joy. Like especially what we shot in January, which was like the wedding and the fight between Rahila and Ria, and that moment, those sort of like 4 weeks were so joyous. We just got back from Christmas holidays, and everyone was just really wanting to like give it their all. And I think it was the scheduling. Audrey did a really good job with the scheduling, because when we came back, everyone just had the energy to be like, yeah,
Yeah,
we've got this, we're making it happen, it's going to be sick. And so yeah, that January filming for me was like my favorite part of filming on this project.
that was January 22, right?
Yeah,
2022.
January 2022. It's
Okay,
a long time
okay.
ago.
So before we get into Polite Society, tell me about your career, how you got into what you do, and what was your path and journey like?
Yeah, I think so. I'm Nigerian, Guyanese, born and raised in the UK, but definitely a Nigerian lady with Guyanese blood. And I think what's quite telling about Nigerian people is that we're super theatrical and dramatic, even with like the most basic of things, like opening up a packet of bread. It's like, there's like a story. So like I've always been a storyteller. I just kind of allowed the universe, for lack of a better word, to sort of like direct what it is that I'm doing. And so kind of I kept myself super open. I went to St. Martin's and did textile design. I came out of there and like worked for a couple of small brands, and then decided I didn't want to be a fashion designer, and then started teaching and started styling and working in music, and just kind of flowed with what felt right at the time. And found myself where I am now, where it's kind of like an amalgamation of everything I've done over the last sort of 15 years from leaving university to now. It's kind of been about how is it that I best tell stories. And so it's, my love of color and my love of textile and fabrication, and how much story there is within that before you even make it into a garment. And then what that garment says by its shape or silhouette or size, and then how that enables someone to bring a character to life, and understanding when the time to be quiet is, and when the time to like add to their character and add to that scene through costume is. And just I've been really fortunate, and I've been able to like I've been afforded the opportunities to play with like a lot of the directors that I've worked with, whether it's Nida or MJ Delaney, who are two women who I've worked with for quite a long time, and being able to be given the space to just be like, this is what we're thinking, but what do you feel like and how do you see it? And just being trusted to like experiment and make mistakes and know that eventually it'll come up with the right thing. I think that's the way in which my career has sort of got to where it is now.
Right. It's funny you mentioned Nigerian being dramatic. I was in Abuja, Nigeria in 2010,
Uh-huh.
and I spent a week there, and here and there we would turn the TV on, and the way that the TV sitcoms or whatever, they were so
Nollywood
at
is
least
drama.
way over the top, like witchcraft and all that fun stuff.
Uh-huh. It's like they're at a theater, but it's on your screen. So
Yeah.
everything's big. And you that resonates outside of the screen into actual homes. You know, the way in which we communicate, the way in which we relay what happened at the market, or relay what happened, like what my sister did yesterday, and I add a bit of spice, and then my other sister tells it to my mum, and it's added another bit of spice to it, and it's just kind of, we don't like to be bland people, and so it just means that we end up dramatizing everything.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it's good. I mean, for arts and crafts, it's really good. I think one of my friend, he's a cinematographer, and he works with me a lot on my films as well, and my projects. And he worked on a couple of Nigerian films here in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who made it, the director, he was Nigerian, and then the production value was really high, so he took it back to Nigeria, and it just did a amazing, because it catered to that market, and then they
Yes.
started making more stuff here and taking it over there, and it wouldn't play anywhere else except Nigeria, and it was really,
But the Nigerian film market is huge.
it is. It's
It's
almost bigger
massive.
than Bollywood, actually. It's bigger than Bollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, when I mean, I've been lucky enough to like make work out in Nigeria, but smaller works like music videos or small
Right.
like shorts and stuff. But I'd love, you know, I'm in talks with a writer out in LA who's got a film that is between America and Nigeria, and designing that. It'd be amazing to spend, you know, 6 to 8 weeks just with like the craftspeople, and really being able to like take what is traditional and authentic to our culture, but also approach it from through the lens of someone who wasn't raised in that space, you know, and was raised in a Nigerian household, but in a Caucasian land. And how does that sort of like affect the way in which I see it and can bring it back to life? So I'm really excited about being able to go and work out there, because I think there's so many incredibly talented people, and the market is so huge. And if you get the right story with the right actors, I feel like you can make something that's really special.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, capturing your culture, but at the same time, because you've been raised in the West, it's a completely different thing. Like, like me going back to my home, even though I moved here a long, long time ago, it's very difficult, but at the same time, it's very challenging and fun at the same time to sort of create that, because you're coming from two sides,
Yeah.
right? And
you can bridge that middle gap, you know, where it's like I'm taking all the things, and also you get to sort of, in a way, you get to adapt the narrative, so it has a very unique point of view, you know. There's a friend of mine called Akinolu Davis Jr., who's a director, and he does a lot of work out in Nigeria, but actually a lot of work in West Africa in general. But he's based here, and he when he goes back to work, the stories that we come back with is the teams, when he's explaining what it is that he wants to do, their responses to that, like, oh, okay. And it's like, but in our mind, we feel like, we're doing something that feels like super authentic and real, but actually it's because we straddle that middle space. You're taking the bits that you want to and making up what makes sense to you. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, creating that bridge, I think, is also, we like to figure out on our own, because we're trying to struggle between two worlds, like trying to find that balance. But at the same time, which I think was probably very helpful for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, on Polite Society, because it was about, a South Asian world being in UK and trying to sort of it wasn't really about integration, but the cultures and all that stuff. So how did Nida discover you, or how did Nida approach you?
So me and Nida worked together on Lady Parts.
Okay, so you guys have, okay.
So we have a couple of years of working relationship, and I was introduced to her through a production designer called Soraya Galani. This is before we did the pilot episode of Lady Parts. And we're the same kind of weird. in that we're both, you know, from ethnic minority backgrounds who work in the arts and have parents who kind of get it and are like, so they're much more, they've always been supportive, but they're obviously much more supportive now with the level of success that we're beginning to accumulate for ourselves. But, you know, that's a very rare thing, because I have a lot of friends who wanted to do something creative, whose parents like, no, you need to go do law or be a doctor or an accountant. Or so we come from similar spaces where we're kind of going against the grain, but it's okay. And that's weird, because it shouldn't be okay, because we should all be doing what second generation migrants who come to the UK are meant to be doing. And then aesthetically, we're very similar in that it's really raw, the way in which she writes. It's also got a very useful energy to it. And those are the same things in the way in which I design. It's like, nothing's polished. There is a youthful energy to it. There is an understanding of being a minority in a space. There is an understanding of trying to make sure that I keep hold of what my cultural identity is, but my cultural identity is a London identity, which is a mix of both Nigerian, British, and all the different multicultures around me, and how that makes me who I am, and what that brings across on in the way in which I design and what you see on screen. So we had lots of things that we kind of connect on. And so when she was talking to me about this film, I was like, yeah, this is for me. Like, I was reading the script and laughing out loud, and I'm like, I shouldn't be laughing this hard because I'm not a 16-year-old girl, but this shit's hilarious. You know, like the fighting and the love between the siblings and the love between the other women in the film, and how it's all about sisterhood. And, you know, there's so many things about this script that when I read it, I was like, okay. And then having someone like Nida in my corner who's like, I trust you. Tell me what you want to do. And you're like, oh shit, I can do anything. Okay. It's kind of like a dream combo. So yeah, that's how we got together, and it kind of, it's been working so far. So far, so good. And I hope it continues to work as well as it has been.
For sure. I hope so too. You mentioned something interesting about, and I would love to know your opinion on this, about how you mentioned that, you know, yourself and Nida, whose parents kind of got it, but at the same time, there are other people that you guys know that ended up being, you know, doctors. This is a conversation I have with people here and there if it comes up. I always find, I think as I've, you know, evolved in terms of maturity and age and all that, I've come to realize, could it be not that it's the parents who stop the kids, but it's also maybe if you don't have it in you that bad enough, you don't fight for it?
I think it's really hard to fight against something you don't know you truly want, right? Because I think
That's
when
what
you're
I'm
a
saying.
teenager, you're kind of just exploring.
But if you really believe that you want it, then
Mm.
you will go at whichever means to get it. What do you think?
Yes, I hear that, but I also think that if something that's instilled into you as a child from any sort of like Nigerian household is that you're meant to make your
Right.
parents proud. And so there is that sort of thing of like, as much as you might want it, you're also straddling, but I do also want to make them proud. I understand the sacrifices they've made to get me to where I am. And as much as this is what I think I could be good at, maybe they might know something. And so I'm going to like lean into that. I think certain people find it easier to push against the grain than others. And that's not to say that they're more determined than others. It's that I probably had a more defined sense of self at 15 than someone else who has then decided to, you know, listen and do well and go and study sciences. And you know what I mean? Like it's at 15, it's defiance. At 37, it's like, oh, you must have been so sure within yourself and really confident. And, you know, like as you get older, you can kind of flip it. But I don't think it's, I don't know how much it is the belief in the self, because I think you're so young. you are being guided and you are listening to that guidance. And it takes you quite a while to actually listen to yourself. I think as the older I get, the more in tune with me I become. I was just lucky that I kind of knew from a very early age that like the route I was going to take in life was never going to be ordinary. And so it was just believing in that. And like I being the loud character as a child, you're kind of like, we can tell her she shouldn't do this, but this kid's not going to listen. So let's like get her into every drama class that she thinks she wants to go to, and get her into like these drawing clubs over the school holidays, and, you know, see where that goes, and just have trust that what we've instilled in her is going to come through, even in this industry, in this career, in this landscape that we don't necessarily understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And, you know, going back to polite society, working on this, I know you've worked with Nida before, you read the script, you loved it. Being on the set, and, you know, what was probably one of the most toughest day or challenge where things were not, you know, in anything, any project, no matter how much you plan, things are going to go, you know, sideways.
That's life.
Up, that's life, right?
That's
and
life.
How what was something that occurred that kind of, you know, stands out, and how you overcame it on the day of or on the week of or whatever that was?
So, you know, for me, the most exciting part of filmmaking to me is the stuff that happens before it gets to camera. And it's the creating, working alongside people to create. And actually, once it gets onto the floor, my job is done. It now is the actors and the director and the DP, and it's their space to bring everything, all the little pieces that we've all been working on, to bring it all to life in this one space. I think when I took on the project, the biggest thing for me was making sure that it felt authentically correct. And so, as someone who isn't from the South Asian community, it was really important for me to get someone, or get a few people on board who could guide me in the do's and don'ts of Muslim weddings or engagements or soirees, and the sort of show me the landscape where I can push, and where if I push beyond that, it won't necessarily read true. And then that will be the effect that I don't want to have on our film. So I think it was starting to work on the Eid soiree, and I had this idea of like the color palette and the way in which I saw it. And I'd spoken with Simon, our production designer, and he told me about what he was planning to do with the space, and what we were doing worked really well. And some of the things that I was being drawn to, the girl who was working with me, Sabira, was like, PC, this isn't, that you wouldn't wear this to a Muslim function. And I was like, but it looks really cool, and I feel like it gives me the South Asian vibe. She's like, yeah, it gives you as a non-South Asian person the South Asian vibe, but me as a South Asian person, this isn't true. And being able to like have that and take that on board without being sort of defeatist or being affected, or like ego being affected, and being able to work around that to make something that I still loved, but was within the remit that made sense. Those are the kinds of things in this project that I was really, those are the problems that we were solving continually, was that bridge of what is true, the different, you know, the lengas, the sour kamises, all of that sort of stuff, and where the spaces were where I could make it fantasyful, you know, and without it singing out too much that you're like, oh no, that's not right. And so it was kind of less on the day, what's happening, but it was more kind of in the prep of trying to get that right. And then obviously there's always, whenever you're doing stunts, just hoping that your stuff doesn't fall apart in midair, and just being like praying. And like, I wouldn't go to set on the days when they were doing big stunt days, because I get so nervous that my stuff's gonna like I can't control it. So therefore I'm like, I just don't want to be there. Just let me know how it went and I'll just watch the rushes tomorrow. And seeing, you know, the fight with Nimra and Priyanka and that spin that she does, and remembering like when they were at the trailer and putting the holes in and not being able to like bond the edges of that fabric. So just praying that it's still in one piece when it comes back and that sort of stuff. Those sorts of things I also think are like, but yeah.
But if something was to go wrong with the outfit, you know, especially in those stunts, I mean, if it was like a normal film where people are just interacting with each other, the chances of anything going wrong with the outfit is highly unlikely. But, you know, with wires and all that stuff, was there like, how would that, what was the sort of contingency plan for that? How would you deal with that?
We had 3 of every item that was going to be used in a fight. So if anything went wrong, there was another one there to replace it. And if anything went wrong with that one, then we went down to the last one, and then you're working frantically on the truck trying to mend the first 2 that have like whatever's happened to them.
Did that happen on this set at any time?
Do you know what? We didn't actually have that happen on this film, thank God.
Okay.
I did have to remake the fight, Priyanka's fight outfit, when we were it wasn't the fight between her and Rahila, but it was a different fight. And her stunt double had her own ones and she had hers. But I think something had happened where I don't know what happened with one of them. It was just too badly damaged. And so, but luckily the makers were really close. So it was just easy to, the issue is when you kind of like, you make everything from scratch and then you can't get the fabrics anymore. And you're like, but luckily we were blessed that didn't, you know, occur to us on this project. But I've heard horror stories from other people and I'm like, please let this not be my fate.
You mentioned earlier about when, you know, the conversation that you had, I forget the girl's name. Was Sabrina the one that was working with you?
Oh, Sabira.
Yeah. That this is not a Muslim outfit, or Muslim people don't, you know, they wouldn't wear something like this. What was the one that you were proposing?
I think I was proposing, so I was looking through lots of like Asian bride magazines and books. And I think I'd highlighted a few styles that I would like to sort of emulate and recreate in my own fabrics, or, you know, my own versions of. And I think through some of those images, she was like, oh no, it's a Muslim wedding and it's a very different thing, and a Muslim wedding to a Hindu wedding. And so this doesn't work in this space, or this, you know what I mean? So it was kind of, it wasn't like one specific thing, but it was just during that research process of the things that I was being drawn to and wanted to make, to put on screen, those conversations happening at that point in time, you know, and in that research and the initial making, and then taking that on board before we start to sort of like, you know, put the final outfits together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
In the prep work, in terms of inspiration, research, did you go through any books, any films?
Oh my God, so many.
Which ones?
So obviously Devdas, because that was where the dance comes from. For the school uniforms, I'm trying to find it now. From the school uniforms, there was a lady called Juliet. I was talking about her name the other day. Oh, there it is, Julia Fullerton Batten. And she does these like repetitive photographs. And when I was designing the school uniforms, I kept coming back to this phrase of disorder within the order, and this idea of like how, as someone who's never had a school uniform, thank God, how do you retain your individuality within this homogenous setting, right? How do I still be PC? How does Priya still be Priya? And so I kept coming back to her images, which were just like, I've got her book here, actually, I'll show you.
Sure.
Oh. So it's kind of just like imagery. And I mean, you know, sometimes when I'm creating stuff, I start in a place that no one really gets except for me. And then when it comes back to it, they're like, oh, okay, I see it now. But just this side, there's this one of these schoolgirls. So I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But it's just like images of that, of like this order within the order. Everything is very sort of ordered and like repetitive, but
Right.
it's also like messed up, you know. And I was looking at stuff like that. Had a lot of research around like the different patterns and the meanings of those patterns in like print design for what we were doing. And then, you know, like I kind of really liked stuff like what's that TV show called? We Are Who We Are. It's like young one, right? Is it We Are Who We Are?
Sounds familiar, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, but it's like a sort of like Gen Z sort of. I'm just going to Google to make sure, because I think it is We Are Who We Are. We are who, yeah, We Are Who We Are. But you know, that sort of this idea of like these teens having their own unique identity and developing a visual language that they're not even necessarily completely sure of just yet, and being able to heighten that. I've got young nieces, and to me, I think a lot of the imagery that we see put out of like teenage girls are like hypersexualized. And I just wanted to make girls who were cool and young and fun, but without any of the sexiness, you know, like not one of them is in that space. And actually that, to me, of all of what we've done with this movie, to know that you're going to have like 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old girls going to see this, and it's going to be an alternative version of like the stuff that they're fed on Instagram every day, is what makes me the most proud.
Yeah, no, that was done very well and aesthetically, and you mentioned about the keeping the characters' individuality while they were in that outfit. And you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because normally, have you ever seen Dead Poet Society?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how that the whole film, you actually feel these characters kind of in this, or you know, like a dictatorship world. They're being told, you feel it. But in this one, excuse my voice, and in Polite Society, you don't. I never felt that, because I think it, along with the outfit, which was, they were not very much in the face, they had that color and everything. It was also the characters, but also at the same time the performance.
Yeah,
you know, that really brought out the individual. You never felt that these three characters, like, you know, Priya and her two friends, they were kind of imprisoned in this school, in this environment.
No. Also, that red is such a like a pungent red.
Yeah.
And then you put it against like the most drab gray you can find, and it kind of takes the sting out the red, so it doesn't look so sort of like ah. And then you've got like, you know, then you've got these really thick, heavy sole shoes. So, and they're in this old building, but they're kind of like clunking away, like we own this space. This space doesn't own us. It's kind of, I feel like that was a success between all departments to make that space get the audience feeling that way. You know, whether it's Priya or Serafina or Ella and their acting chops, or Ash and the way that she, like, you know, recorded that, or the direction that Nida was given, and this the way in which Sai had made the space. I think we all came together in that moment, and Claire with the little, you know, the little things, the bows here on Serafina and the ones here for Alba. And, you know, I think we really sort of, we gave the girls an individual, the girls were individuals, but actually the school was the school, and no one got lost within that school, you know? Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, and the one thing that I love about this film that, again, is kind of missing from the cinema today, it was very focused, right? Like, you have the protagonist, she has two friends, she has parents, she has a sister, there's a nemesis, you know, there's like 7-8 characters, and again, everything begins with the script. If the script is great, almost close to 95% of the time, everything else starts falling in place. Right?
I have a question for you, actually. Sure. Who was your favorite character?
My favorite character was Priya.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll because I think it's probably because, we were talking about this whole thing earlier, that trying to figure out your own
Mm.
identity, and like, she was so focused in what she wanted,
Mm-hmm.
right? As that starking contrast in the beginning, her
Yeah.
sister, confused, chaos, and she's
Mm-hmm.
just so focused with her martial arts.
Yeah.
And I think, as creative people, if you know where you're headed and what your goals are, more so, that's how you are. And then you're always questioning stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I am.
Yeah.
I always question everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a little too much, but that's just how my
I think
personality
it's
is.
needed. I think we need to,
Yeah.
I think we've been given a voice, right? We've been
Yeah.
given a voice that's unique and individual, and we understand, not everyone understands that they have a voice. So many people
Yeah.
sit silent. I think when you work in the creative industries, when you work in filmmaking, when you work in storytelling, you understand that your voice has power. And so when things happen around you, you put power to that. Why is this happening? How is this happening? When is
Yeah.
this happening? Who is this happening to? What, and you kind of, the more you question, for me anyway, the more I question, the more curious I become with what's
Oh
around
yeah,
me, the
100%.
better the world. Like, I'm just like, I have my passion for life is fueled by my curiosity for life, And I think
Yeah.
I get that about Rhea. I think Rhea as a character is, well, look, Rhea as a character was written phenomenally well in the first place, but
Yeah.
Rhea was brought to life by Priya
She was
in such a
amazing.
magnificent way.
She was amazing. She was
You
the
know,
best performance in the entire film. I mean, I'm not trying to take that away from anybody else. They did a great job too. But she, because the protagonist, she really drew everybody, sort of got the energy off her.
mm-hmm.
That's what I
She drew
felt.
you in from the moment you
Yeah.
saw her on screen. She
Yeah.
drew you in her gold helmet on her little bike. She was focused, and we were focused with her, and she was brilliant. For
I th
me, I
so
loved
yes.
Rahila.
Yeah. She she reminded me of Cruella de Vil.
Costume wise, Rahila's character, Rahila was the most fun to costume of everyone. For
Yeah.
me, that was my costume design dream, to
Oh,
make
was it?
this expensive, dramatic villain who is an older lady that is chic as hell, and that like just looks like she's dripping in money and gold and riches, and in like, and also straddling for her, it was like, how do I make it that we can see that she knows who she is, she's proud of where she's from, but she's also got this Western aesthetic that leans back into South Asian aesthetic. How do I do that? That was, yeah, I loved design. I loved everything. And Rahila's wardrobe for me was like my, yeah, dream. And to do that cape, and to make, putting Rhea in a anarkali for the dance, which is
Mm,
like such an old style of,
yeah.
Asian dress, to be able to flip it on the older Rahila and make her something that's actually quite Western in its aesthetic, in that this like pants, like double-breasted pantsuit, but give it the drama of what we get from minority dressing, whether it's the embellishments and the embroidery and the, yeah, I loved designing Rahila. I mean, I love designing it all, don't get me wrong, but
No, no, I get it. I
her
get it.
costumes were,
And I think the first time you see her in that the couch sitting, when they're, the women are having a
yeah,
conversation. The conversation they were having, like, showed her attitude, but I at the same time, I genuinely believe, I mean, we people don't see it because everything is presented as a package.
yeah.
If her outfit was different, it
Mm.
probably would have sent that same vibe.
Hmm.
everything adds up, and it's her wardrobe,
Yeah.
and it's her what she's wearing is basically who she is, and she's
Yeah.
trying to throw that at the at the protagonist, at the
Hmm.
audience, and
Yeah.
it was done really, really well. I loved her outfit too,
Yeah.
and her character. I mean, antagonist is necessary, right? And she was a
Yeah.
perfect she was a perfect antagonist.
She really was. She really was. It was fun. It was fun. And I think, I'm not sure if you've spoken to Ash yet or if you're about to,
I I did. I
you
did. I was
did.
I but I spoke to Ashley before I saw the film. So I didn't
Ah,
get a chance to see it until yesterday. I spoke to her on Tuesday or Monday, I think.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, because I
Yeah,
think Ash did an amazing job.
she did.
We don't have that many female DPs shooting action. And so for the way that she shot it, I thought was so engaging. Um, and it made my work, she made my work sing. And that's always, you know, I'm always grateful for that, for a DP that understands that, like, you're not just lighting these faces, you're lighting these costumes. And how do I
Yeah.
make it sing? And she did that. So I was really, it was a real labor of love. And, what we've come out of it with, I couldn't be more proud of,
No,
really.
it's a great film, and it's been a while that I was talking to Ashley. I was the last film, and I'm sure there were many in between that I felt, where it's like a cross-cultural thing. I mean,
Mm,
this wasn't really about cross-culture, but it was more so being in that Western culture
mm,
and living in that. But it was more just dealing with the internal
mm,
issues. That Bend It Like Beckham was something that I
mm,
felt really great about when it came out. I think it was
mm,
what, 20 years ago now.
yeah.
And before that, it was Monsoon Wedding, which was directed by Mira Nair.
Mm,
Uh, and since then, since Men Are Like Beckham, I haven't seen a South Asian film. Oh, sorry about that. South
mm,
Asian story-based film in the West done well.
yeah. There's one film that you're missing out though.
Which one?
East is East.
Yes, that wasn't that before Men Are Like Beckham?
I think that was before Bennett Like
Yeah,
Beckham.
East
But
is East
after
is
Monsoon
absolutely
Wedding.
hilarious.
Yeah.
East
Yeah.
is absolute. That was a hardcore depiction of it. I don't even know how to say it, but it was an amazing film.
I think that we've in the wake of sort of like George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and like Donald Trump, I think there's been so much focus on the Black experience, and bringing that to the forefront, whether it's on the big screen or the small screen. I think what's been really interesting in the last year and a half is that the South Asian experience and the Far East Asian experience has begun to be put onto the big screen and the small screen, whether it's stuff like what we've just done now with Polite Society or things like Beef. I think people are beginning to realize that minorities, it's a plurality. It's not a singular thing. And actually, there are many minority groups who have stories to tell that aren't being told. And so it's a real this, and then with Lady Parts, being able to get those sorts of stories out on screen and for people to start to see them and start to begin to reminisce about things like East is East and Bend It Like Beckham, and understand that this isn't something new. It's just been a long time since we've been doing it. I'm hoping that it's like it's a sort of like an insight in what's to come, you know.
Right. I think in UK, because a lot of people moved to UK in the
Mm,
60s, you
mm,
know. So like shows like Mind Your Language, I don't know if you've seen that, where
mm,
there is people from students from different cultures and they're trying to learn English. That was a very common thing in UK, but I think in Canada and US, the
mm.
majority of the migration started in the 90s.
Okay.
And a lot of people that I in terms of like population, like when you're
Mm,
trying to cater to a demographic as a film, as a business, I
mm,
think that started to emerge maybe in the last to 12 years. And so
Mm-hmm.
those things take time. And I feel that,
Mm.
before there wasn't a market because there were not that many people to see it.
Mm.
That's how what I feel. In the UK, there always has been for a long time because a lot of people did move to UK in the
Yeah.
60s and the 50s and 70s.
We have a
Uh,
massive Southeast Asian community in the
yeah,
UK.
yeah, yeah. No, I've been to London so many times. All I see is, diversity everywhere, and a lot of it's very multicultural. But I think things take time in their own pace and their own speed,
Mm.
and we should just be a little patient and move on with it.
No, I think we should be patient. I don't disagree with that, but I think it's
Yeah,
just nice that like it appears that the tides are turning and that we're getting just much more sort of diverse stories in filmmaking, or image making. And this is, I'm saying this as a Black woman. The stories that we see of minorities often revolve around one group, or stuff that's been happening in the last 5 to 10 years anyway. So it's nice to see that actually people who are commissioning stuff are realizing that there's so much more diversity, even on this small little island, that we can be tapping into to tell these sorts of stories. And by doing that, we're getting things like Polite Society, we're getting things like Lady Parts, we're getting things like, you know, the plethora of product that's coming out that is a
right.
reflection on our communities.
Yeah. It's also, have you seen that movie? What was it called? Rich Asians or something? What was it called?
Oh yeah, Crazy Rich Asians.
Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a
That
huge
was 2 years
market.
ago, no?
Yeah, about four or
Yeah.
5 years ago. I think it was before. It was a great film,
Hmm.
but incidentally, it didn't do well in China because
Mm.
because they actually felt that it was way too. It made the Chinese people look really westernized and
Okay.
bad. So, my point is, at the end of the day, there's so many cultural barriers and so many
Mm.
different things. And I think studios at the end of the day are running businesses, and if
Mm.
they see, which they have now, if they see there's market for it, and if
Mm.
the story is good regardless of
Mm.
where it's coming from,
Mm-hmm.
they will do it. But it has to be a good story, right? We
Yeah.
can't just make films for the
I
sake
mean, you
of.
say that there's a lot of terrible stuff out there.
Oh, no, I know 95% of stuff is garbage. It doesn't matter where it comes from. There's a
Yeah.
lot of garbage out there,
Yeah.
mainstream, independent. And I think that's a good thing because now I feel the tide is turning in terms of good filmmaking, because
Yeah.
superhero films have completely ruined independent cinema. Completely ruined. I mean, I kudos to all those people who watch it. I have nothing against it. I think they've it now, but I think the people are getting tired of it and they want story-driven films, period.
But do you not think that there could be a cool superhero film if it wasn't from a Marvel or
I
a
love
DC?
Joker. I love Joker.
Mm.
I loved Batman Begins, Dark Knight, because they were not, in my view, those were more focused on stories and
Mm.
characters.
Mm.
When you start putting too much action and visual effects
Mm.
and it overtakes the story,
Mm.
you've lost the audience. That's just how I feel.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I've interviewed people who have done superhero movies, and I will talk to them, no problem. I mean, because they worked hard, of course.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do, but I haven't been able to connect to them yet.
In the
So
same way.
maybe
Yeah.
that will change down the road.
I think that there can be some really good superhero films. Um, but I think that we're just oversaturated with superhero films, and that story is no longer important in superhero films. But I'm really
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
excited by the prospect of original superhero movies. So superhero movies that don't come from the DC family or the Marvel family,
yeah.
that are independent new stories and new superheroes. And like, if I was creating a superhero today, what would my superhero be fighting for? And who would they come into contact with? What would they, do you know what I mean? Like those sorts of things, I think I'm really interested, because I think there's so much happening in our social awareness that this is kind of the perfect time to make a new superhero and to make
Well,
someone.
Polite Society, in my view, is a superhero movie, if you want to
Yeah.
call it, right? But it wasn't more so focused, like you said, about the superpowers and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
even films like even people who do humanitarian work
Mm.
and the document like I make narrative documentaries, and I have like a basically protagonist and antagonist and everything,
Mm.
and they're the real superheroes who are doing so much work. That's just again,
Yeah. I agree.
you're right, and I think that's a great thing that you said. Outside of, because Marvel and DC it's a business, right? And I feel that if you make a small film about just an ordinary person, because people relate to ordinary,
Yeah.
that's how we all are. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much money you have or how much mansions you
Yeah.
have. We connect to those, and I hope what you just said,
Mm.
maybe people will take word for that and
Yeah.
do something about it, because we need those kind of stories
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
do. I feel they're coming. I feel they're coming.
I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah.
Great. I know you have a meeting coming up. Uh,
Yes, gotta go back into
so
a
I
fitting.
so I probably want to give you some time to get ready for it. This has been a pleasure.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you
so
so much. I've really enjoyed it. I chat a lot, so sorry if you've got to lose
No,
loads
so do I. So it worked out.
of.
I would love to talk to you about some of your past work down the road if you're up for it. And what's in the future for you? Just one last question. What are you working on that you're able to talk about?
So I have a film due out, which was written by Daniel Kaluuya, directed by a guy called Kidway Tavares, which is set in a sort of dystopian, semi-dystopian future of London in 21 years time from now. And that's with Netflix. So that's due out towards the end of the year. I have another film out with Jodie Comer and Benedict Cumberbatch, which is based on the book called The End We Start From. And so it's a story about the climate crisis.
Mm.
And it follows this lady who has just given birth to her child as they try to stay safe, as the UK is affected by really severe weather issues. And I just finished the Amy Winehouse biopic with Studio Canal. So I'm on a sort of semi hiatus. I'm actually going in 2 weeks. We're doing some reshoots on the Daniel Kaluuya thing, some pickup shots for that, and then that will be fully in the edit, ready to be finished and graded,
Sure.
and then be out there. But yeah, for now, I'm taking a little bit of time whilst I've been on the 3 years of not stopping, and then I'll start Lady Part season 2. So we'll get back together with Nida and see what else we can do with our Muslim punk band, and see how the 3 years in between, or the 4 years in between filming it, has changed the way in which we approach it. So yeah, it's quite busy, but also like nice. I think the end of the year is really exciting because that's when all 3 of those films are out towards the end of the year. So it's kind of like a just sort of a sitting duck waiting to see how they do. But when you make stuff, you never know if it's going to be successful or not. You can only make things that you believe in the stories of, and
that's it.
I think all 3 of them, I believe in the stories that we've told. So I just hope that they come together in the edit.
Absolutely. And let's chat then when all these films are about to come out, and we can have further conversation about it.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much, PC.
See you later. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.